Nice. Okay, so as you guys know, we've been going over this series in Sabbath School. Is God a moral monster? We're talking about where God can seem very harsh, or there's a lot of weird things in the Old Testament specifically. And so we're going over some of that. Last week, if you guys remember, we'll go over it together. But last week, we went over the four different possible reasons why God commanded Abraham to sacrifice Isaac. So let's review these together. What was the first one? It was by a Christian philosopher, Kierkegaard. What was his argument specifically? You guys remember? Yeah, yeah. So it's not wrong. Abraham, it wasn't wrong for Abraham to sacrifice Isaac because God commanded Abraham to do it. And so whatever God says, it's okay. All right, number two. Tim Keller said idol removal. Okay, number two. Do you guys remember what this one is? Sure. Very nice. Okay, so Isaac became an idol in Abraham's heart. So the only way for God to remove Isaac from Abraham's heart was to go to this extreme. Very good. Number three. All right, Luis. Everybody else went, so number three is on you. What did Paul Copan say? What did he say about the life of faith? Okay. Yeah. So Paul Copan's idea is God was always putting Abraham through the test of faith. Okay, even from the beginning, he called Abraham to leave his home. That's a call to faith. And then after that, he wasn't the first son, right? There was another son. Okay, God actually said, "Hey, I want you to have him leave." And then again, this was another test of faith as well. So God was constantly putting Abraham in this test of faith. And then also, like Luis has mentioned, Abraham believed that God would actually revive him, even if Abraham did kill him. Yeah, so it was an ultimate test of faith. Okay, number four, the ultimate lamb. What was this one? Yeah, very good, very good. Exactly. Yeah. So Abraham actually, yeah, didn't have to sacrifice Isaac, but God was trying to teach him that it was actually going to be God who's going to be sacrificing his own son to die for us. So it was pointing to Jesus. Okay, very nice. All right, that's what we talked about last week. Today we're gonna go in with another one. Open letter to Dr. Laura. So Dr. Laura is a Jewish author, and she's a radio host who offers tips about relationships, parenting, just about life based on the Old Testament. Okay, and then somebody wrote a letter. It's an open letter, so they wrote it on like an article or like a website somewhere, basically writing a letter to Dr. Laura. Okay, so again, Dr. Laura, she's a Jewish doctor who gives tips. And this is what he said. And then he's kind of criticizing her, okay? Even though he's being sarcastic with her, okay? He says this, "Dear Dr. Laura, thank you so much for doing so much to educate people regarding God's law." But he's being sarcastic, okay? He's making fun of her. "I have learned a great deal from your show. When someone tries to defend the homosexual lifestyle, for example, I simply remind them that Leviticus 18:22 clearly states that it is an abomination. End of debate." Okay? However, I do need some advice from you, however, regarding some of the specific laws and how to follow them. Okay? He said, "I would like to sell my daughter into slavery as sanctioned in Exodus 21:7. In this day and age, what do you think would be a fair price for her?" Okay, again, he's making fun of the Old Testament. Okay, next one. "I have a neighbor who insists on working on the Sabbath. Exodus 35:2 clearly states that he should be put to death. Am I morally obligated to kill him myself?" Next one. "A friend of mine feels that even though eating shellfish is an abomination, he believes that it is less abomination than homosexuality. I don't agree. Can you settle this?" Next one. "Leviticus 21:20 states that I may not approach the altar of God if I have a defect in my sight. I have to admit that I wear reading glasses. Does my vision have to be 20/20 or is there some wiggle room here?" Next one. "Most of my male friends get their hair trimmed, including the hair around their temple, even though this is expressly forbidden by Leviticus 19:27. How should they die?" "I know from Leviticus 11:6-8 that touching the skin of a dead pig makes me unclean. But may I still play with football if I wear gloves?" Okay, so this person is basically writing out all the different, according to him, weird laws in the Old Testament and basically ridiculing her and saying, okay, how do I deal with this then? Question number one, how would you reply to this person? Mm. Okay. So what I'm hearing is there's a differentiation between cultural and principle of the law. And so we have to, the cultural stuff, that law could change. We have to understand the underlining purpose of those laws. And so we have to understand the context and the culture of the time. And we got to try to see what the meaning behind it is. All right. Anyone else? Sarah, Luis, Chong'en, any other reply? Hmm. Okay. So you could, it seems like you could resonate with what this person is saying. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Okay. So depending on, you're saying we need to look at the context. Who is this written to? And if it's written to someone, then it doesn't, would you say it doesn't pertain to us now? So wouldn't the argument, can I make the argument, well, if it's written to, if it's not written to us, most of the Bible is not written to me specifically. Isn't it, isn't it, aren't all these rules, isn't it all abolished or it's not important anymore? It's just for those people at that time? But these are laws that God gave, not laws that people gave. Okay, okay. So context is needed. All right. Chung'un, Tracy, any other thoughts before we move on to the next one? No. Okay, let's number two. What are some other Old Testament rules that you can think of that is weird? So far what we have is slavery, working on the Sabbath, and you get that's death punishment. Some of the eating, and then if you have defects, you can't cut the sideburns. And then also, you can't touch the skin of a dead pig as well. Do you know any other weird rules in the Old Testament? Sure. Right. So, so during pregnancy, during the woman's period, they're unclean. They're deemed unclean. Okay. Mm, right. Okay, that's a good one. Yeah. If you touch a dead body, that's also unclean. Very good. Any other ones that you guys can think of? Weird rules, laws? Okay, let's go to number 3 then. Do you think we still need to keep the Old Testament law? Why or why not? Do you think we still need to keep the Old Testament law? Why or why not? Okay, I'll call out people because we only have 30 minutes left. Okay, Tajib, go for it. Okay. Mm, mm, mm. Okay, okay. Mm, okay. So you would say not all of the Old Testament law, but it's not like you just pick and choose which one you like, you don't like. But there's like sacrificial laws that we don't follow anymore. But there's some other laws like the moral law, like the Ten Commandments. We still follow those as well. Okay. Any other thoughts, Sarah, Chung'un, Tracy, Louise? Do you think we still need to keep the Old Testament laws? Okay, so similar to, okay, okay. So there's no temple to sacrifice, and also Jesus was the ultimate sacrifice, so we don't need to keep those. Okay, very good. So that's what we'll talk about. That's what we'll be talking about today. Is there's all these different laws. How do we understand them? Okay, and it's going to be a couple of parts, but today it's more of the introduction. But like which ones do we keep? And then specifically for us, for SDAs, we're very. There's a lot of people who say they would agree. Oh, the whole sacrificial law, the temple laws. Yeah, of course, they no longer exist. But SDAs, we still keep the food laws. Okay, and then some Sunday people say or a lot of them would actually say, no, 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 those laws are actually sacrificial laws as well. Okay, or ceremonial laws, and so we don't need to keep them. And so that's what we, not today, but we'll be talking about that more as well. Okay, so before we continue, I think we have to talk about some things. All right, cultural insensitivity. I apologize. I put a note in there myself, but I forgot to put the story in there. But do you guys know what a hijab is? It's that thing that Muslim ladies wear, okay, to cover their hair and their head. But you guys I'm sure, have heard of stories like this where during 9/11, okay, you guys know that like there was Islamic extremists who attacked the United States with a terrorist attack. And after that, a lot of ladies, right, with the hijabs, a lot of them, they were getting like hit, and they were getting like assaulted and things like that. I'm sure you guys have heard of stories like that. And some of them, they might not be Islam, or some of them, they might not be Iraqis or whatnot, right? It's just they're wearing it out of their cultural or religious reasons, but people were just beating them up, okay, because of those kind of things. Okay, so with that said, we need to understand a couple of things when we look at the Old Testament. But of course, like Tachi-san said, there's some weird rules in the New Testament as well. But whenever we look at the Bible, there's a couple of things we have to remember. Number one, we have to be culturally sensitive. Just because it doesn't fit a 21st Western American culture doesn't mean that it's wrong. Okay? So just because we don't understand it, that doesn't mean that it makes it wrong. Right? So for example, I know a lot of people, nowadays people don't say it as much, but I remember during that time when when the ladies were wearing hijab, a lot of people are saying, oh, you see, this is why we need to get rid of Muslims, or we need to get rid of the Eastern, that kind of mindset, because they're oppressing women. Okay? But what if they want to wear it? Or what if that's part of their culture and they enjoy wearing it? Okay? So again, just because it doesn't make sense for us as Westerners, that doesn't mean that it's wrong. Okay? And so again, we look at the Bible and there's a lot of things where it's like, oh, it doesn't make sense to us, so therefore they must be wrong. And maybe they might be wrong on certain things. But there might be things that we might be actually wrong as well. Okay? Just because it's okay in the 21st century, that doesn't mean that it's okay everywhere. So that's what we have to remember. So what we need to be is to be open-minded and actually willing to learn. And obviously, like this person here, this person is not really asking questions. This person is trying to criticize. And so if you ever come across someone like this, then you just have to just walk away, because this person doesn't want explanation. This person just wants to make fun of another culture or another religion. All right, so that's the first one. We have to be open-minded and willing to listen. Second one, we have to understand that even our culture, it's always changing. Okay, so culture everywhere, it's always changing. I'm going to give you an example of homosexuality and anger later, but you have to think of this. There are things that your parents have done that embarrass you. Correct? Right? I'm sure all of us can think of something. But we have to remember that there's going to be things that you have done that will embarrass your kids. Okay? And then when your kids grow up, there's going to be things that they do that embarrass their kids as well. Why? Because culture is always changing. Okay? So what that tells us is every single culture has criticized the Bible. Every single culture. Okay? About something. Right? 21st century for us Westerners, we're going to specifically criticize the Bible on certain things. But there's going to be other things that we're totally okay with. Okay? But other cultures, they have criticized something. So I'll give you kind of an example of how Western culture is always changing. Even couple hundred years ago, let's put it further. Like if you think of when they had like knights and things like that, during that time, if you had homosexual tendencies, then what happens to you? That's like death sentence, basically. Okay, but what if you have anger? Not a problem, right? If somebody, like for example, me and Lewis is walking and Lewis hits me, like he bumps me, then what do? You throw down the gauntlet, right? So that's like, I'm ready to fight. Let's go to the arena and let's die for death, or let's fight until death, kind of a thing. So if you have anger, that makes you manly. That's a good thing. But if you like another man, no, you're a horrible person, or you deserve death. Okay? But nowadays, what happened? In 21st century, what do they say? Oh, if you feel a feeling towards somebody, anybody, any gender, anything else, oh, that's totally fine. But if you get angry, then what happens? Then you have to get treatment. Okay? So again, I'm not saying one is right, one other is right, or how you treat it is right. Okay? But more than that, what I'm trying to show you is that culture is always, always changing. Okay? That's number 2. Number 3, warning against modern snobbery. This is what C.S. Lewis says. This is what modern snobbery looks like. A, uncritical acceptance of the intellectual climate common to our age. So basically, we say, oh, whatever our popular media says, or whatever we believe is true, must be true. We never question that. Okay, so a lot of people nowadays say, oh, homosexuality, no problem. And the Bible says homosexuality is wrong. Oh, the Bible is wrong then. Okay, but we don't think about why is homosexuality okay? Okay, just because popular media or most people say it's okay, does that mean it's okay? Okay, or is there, so again, we don't think about the common beliefs that we hold today. We just go, oh, that's just true, because everybody says it's true. And that he says, C.S. Lewis says, that's modern snobbery, because we don't actually question things. Okay? And the second part is the assumption that whatever has gone out of date is on that count discredited. So it's basically this idea, the modern snobbery is whatever we believe today is correct. And in the past, oh, those people in the past, like they were so dumb, or they were so uneducated, or they were so old style. Okay, that kind of idea is what you call modern snobbery. You're not thinking about what you actually believe, and you only criticize people in the past. Okay? Unless, obviously, you actually thought this through and you have reasons to believe it, then that's totally fine. But what C.S. Lewis is saying, a lot of us, we don't even think about what we actually believe is true. And we just say, oh, those people in the past, they're wrong. Okay, without trying to understand. So again, all 3 of these, we have to be, when we are looking at the Bible, we need to be culturally sensitive. Okay, we can't be narrow-minded. And we have to realize that even our culture is always changing. And then number 3 is we have to actually think about, why is it that these things bother us? Okay, we can't just say, oh, those people in the past, in the Bible, they're dumb. And we're so smart, we're so enlightened. We can't do that. Okay? So those are the 3 things that we have to remember. Any questions or clarifications on this? All right. So with that said, let's actually go into why is it again. But that doesn't mean that these laws are. So again, we have to try to understand, why did God give these for us very seemingly very weird laws. Okay, let's go over this. Do you guys remember what is Emancipation Proclamation? Do you guys remember that? Well, it tells you right here. Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, it freed all the slaves in America. Do you guys remember that? With Abraham Lincoln, he became the president and he said, no, we need to outlaw slavery. No more slavery. But what happened after that? This started the American Civil War between the North and the South. Do you guys remember what did the North say? North said no slavery. So they supported the president. And the South said, no, we believe in slavery. And so they fought with each other. In 1865, so 2 years later, Southern General Robert E. Lee surrendered to the Northern General Ulysses S. Grant, and it ended the war. Okay, they estimated that 600,000 men were killed, and 3 million people fought during the war. Okay. However, even with Emancipation Proclamation, even with the North winning the war, it did not eradicate radical prejudice and radical injustice in this country right away. Does that make sense? So yes, there was a law that outlawed slavery, but was there still slaves in this country? Yeah, for a very long time. And the way that people looked at black people, and some people would say, depending on where you stand with that. Some people would say, oh yeah, that still exists even today. Okay, that prejudice, that racial prejudice. Okay, so even though, again, we're about 200, 150 years removed from this war and this law that passed, again, there's still steps that needs to take place. Okay. Again, a good deal of protest, regulations, time was required to make significant headway in the pursuit of radical justice. Okay, so far so good? Are you guys following me? Okay, similarly, we see in the Bible that God is incrementally trying to restore the world back to the original design. Okay, so there's a lot of things in the Bible that you disagree with and you look at it and you go, this is totally wrong. And God would totally agree with that. God would say, yes, absolutely. These things that human beings are doing, absolutely wrong. Okay? But we go, oh, but God, how come you're allowing slavery? Or, oh, God, how come you're allowing sexism to still continue? Or, oh, God, how come you're still allowing men to marry multiple wives? These kind of things. Okay? So the whole idea is that we have to see that God, okay, is trying to work with human beings. And because he's working with human beings, he's taking very, very slow steps. Not because he wants it to be slow, but because he's working with human beings. And human beings, it takes time. Okay? So, here's the background of the ancient East. If you guys remember, there was a perfect world in Genesis, but sin enters in. Not it. The social order deteriorates very, very quickly. Okay? And by the time Noah comes around, it says this: every inclination of their thoughts were evil. Okay? So every single human being, all they thought about was evil, 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 evil. As you guys remember, so God raised up a covenant nation and gave the people laws to live by. Okay? Why? Because all they think about is evil, 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 evil. Okay? In doing so, he adapted his ideas to a people whose attitudes and actions were influenced by deeply flawed structures. Okay? So what this person is trying to basically say is, by the time God tries to set up Abraham and sets up this Israelite nation, okay, the world is already very, very broken. Okay, there's a lot of things that are going wrong. But he's trying to set up a system within this very, very flawed structure. He's trying to change their minds, okay, and give them laws that is more towards the ideal of where he wants it to be. Again, we have to understand, yet these laws weren't the permanent. Okay? It wasn't a permanent thing in the Old Testament. Okay? It wasn't divine ideal for all persons everywhere. Okay? So just because there's laws in the Old Testament, that doesn't mean that, oh, God said it there, and so it has to be we have to follow every single one of them every single time. Okay? Now, some of these laws, not all of them, of course, but some of these laws were not supposed to be permanent. Okay? It wasn't supposed to be ideal. But at that time, that was needed because he was trying to change them. And then we see God informed his people that a new and enduring, everlasting covenant would be necessary. And we see that in Jeremiah and Ezekiel as well. Okay. Continuing on. Basically, this is what N.T. Wright, he's a very, very famous scholar. This is what he says. The law of Moses is given for a specific period of time and is then set aside. Not because it's a bad thing now, happily abolished, but because it was a good thing whose purpose has now been accomplished. Or as Paul puts it in Galatians 3:24, the law was a tutor for Israel to prepare the way for Christ. Okay? So again, if you understand Old Testament law as not something that, oh, you see, God told us these laws, so we have to follow them forever. But, oh, God was actually preparing these people, okay, just during that time so that it can point us to Jesus, okay, who is the ultimate fulfillment. And that's why Jesus says, I'm the ultimate fulfillment of the law. But Jesus doesn't say, but I have not come to abolish the law either. Okay? The law has its proper place as well. Okay? All right. So if we understand the Old Testament laws in this kind of context, then it makes more sense. All right. All right. So a couple of things. These are just it's saying the same thing, but so this is how we have to understand the Torah or the Mosaic Law. Number one, the Mosaic Law was temporary and as a whole isn't universal, binding upon all humans of all cultures. Okay, it was during that time and specific culture during a specific economy. Number two, the Mosaic times were indeed cruel and uncultured in many ways. So, Sinai legislation makes a number of moral improvements without completely overhauling ancient Near Eastern social cultures and assumptions. Okay? So this is basically saying that, again, we have to understand, during that time, there were a lot of cruel things that they did to, like, slaves, for example. Okay? But God couldn't just tell them, hey, no more slaves, because they couldn't understand that. Okay? So, instead, he gave them proper rules of how to actually deal with slavery. Okay? And then in time, okay, he got rid of slavery altogether. God didn't banish all fallen, flawed, ingrained social structures when Israel wasn't ready to handle the ideals. Taking into the account the actual, God encoded more feasible laws, though he directed his people towards moral improvement. So again, same idea over and over again. Common ancient, actually we'll just skip this one. Okay. Any questions, clarification so far? All right. We'll end with this part right here. Stages of Israelites. And now, if we understand this different stages of where the Israelites were at, we see that God gives them different commands and different things as well. Okay? It's going to be very important. Stage number one. Okay? We see that now they're just tiny little clan, just wandering around. Okay? They have no place to call home, so they have no political authority. Okay? It's just them, just the family. Okay? And then when they get to Exodus, now that they're a nation now, and they have a place they're actually going to go in, and now they can actually regulate rules and regulations, God actually gives them laws or rules or regulations. Okay? And it depending on who's counting, but they estimate about 613 laws, which is actually not a lot. I mean, for us, it looks like a lot. But if you look at just American laws, how many laws do we have? We have so much more. Even traffic laws. I'm sure there's more than 600 laws. Okay? So again, there's different laws even within. Why? Because in a nation, for people to interact with each other, for people to be safe, there has to be laws. And so same thing. Because God is not just, God is setting up a nation or a country, he's giving them laws. Hey, these are the different things I want you to do. Okay? Because again, before that, they were just all slaves. So they don't understand. Number three, when it comes, and then after that, it doesn't become a theocracy anymore. It's not God who's the king, but they don't want that. They want a human king. Okay? And so monarchy happens. Kingdoms happen. And then after that, what happens? They lose the land forever. Not forever, but they lose the land because they get conquered by different nations. Okay, so they become exiled. And then after that, they actually come back. Post-exiled community. Okay, so we understand, if you actually read the Bible carefully, that with different contexts comes different ethical demands. Okay, so for example, over here, in stage 2 and stage 3, what happens if you disobeyed on the Sabbath, if you didn't keep the Sabbath? Then what happens? Then you get killed for that. Okay, but how about stage 4? What happens in stage 4? They can't do that anymore. Okay, not because they're disobedient, because they don't have the authority to kill anybody anymore. Because it's not their nation anymore. Does that make sense? All right. So again, different context comes different ethical demands. For example, these are other examples. Adultery, okay, for example, is still wrong. Okay, but we cannot stone because of the current social structure. Right now, we're not living in a monarchy or a theocracy. But if we were in a theocracy, if God says you need to stone people who are committing adultery, then we would do it. And people would have no problem with it. Just like even today, we have death sentence for certain things. Or we have a certain punishment, or some people go to prison for certain things. Why? Because that's the law that we abide by. So adultery is still wrong, but we cannot stone because of the current social structure. But the church actually tells us within Christians, we still must discipline its members. Okay, so we can't do it as like, oh, we can't go to the police and say, oh, these people commit adultery, we need to stone them. But as a church, okay, we have authority on what we can do with our church members. Because we still believe that adultery is still wrong. Okay, things like that. Again, we have to understand that in different stages, there were different ethical demands that was required. I'll give you another example. In the first, second, and third, God continued to tell them, don't intermingle with the foreigners. Okay, don't intermarry with them. Don't talk to them. Separate yourself. Why? Because the whole point was God was trying to make them holy, to not get influenced. But if we actually see in stage 4, okay, through Jeremiah, God actually instructs people, okay, when you get to Babylon, I want you to stay there. I want you to mingle with them. I want you to actually flourish there. Like, stay there. Don't try to come back to Israel. Okay, stay there for 70 years. Okay, so again, why? Because different context, different situation, there's different ethical demands. Okay, so again, we have to come with an overall understanding of the Bible. Then we can understand, oh, why did God make these rules? Okay, with that mindset, it makes a little more sense. Are there still things that we don't understand? Absolutely. Okay, but if we understand what God was God's bigger picture, then these things make a little more sense. All right, and then starting next week, we're going to start going a little bit deeper into these laws and try to understand these laws within everything that we talked about today. All right. Review number 1. What are the 3 things that we must do to be culturally sensitive? Okay, what are the 3 things? Do you guys remember? Try your best. Okay, you have to be open-minded. Why? Why be open-minded? Okay, so we have to be open-minded because number 1, okay, even our culture, it's always changing. Okay, what else? What are some other things? Okay, that's the second one. Very good. Okay, just because we don't understand it, that doesn't mean it's wrong. And then number 3, this was the last one. Do you remember? It was modern snobbery. Okay, just because it's in the past, that doesn't mean that it's wrong. Okay, just because we believe something today, that doesn't mean that it's right. Okay. Number 2, what is the incremental step idea? Incremental steps idea. This was related to the Civil War and slavery. So what is this idea? Yeah. Right. Right. Change happens very, very slowly. Okay, so how does that help us view the Mosaic laws then? Yes. Very good, very good. Let's go to number 3. How does the stages of the Israelites help us understand the Old Testament? Very good, very good. All right. Number 4, and then we'll finish with this because we're out of time as well. What was interesting new for you during this lesson?